Alright boys, welcome back to the channel. Hopefully you guys are having a good patch day if this does come out when I intend it to. So not to waste your guys' time, let's jump straight into it. Let's go over the RB meta changes, or what could possibly be the changes. The first vehicle is the F-16C. This is obviously new. It basically has a better engine, giving you 3,000 kilos more thrust, but the plane is around 800 kilos heavier. The maneuverability of the plane does take a little bit of a hit because of this, but the roll rate is still very good and you can still pull over 10 Gs in a sustained turn at higher speeds. Where the real downside of this plane is its low speed maneuverability. Because you're heavier, when you don't have that air rushing over your wings, you do feel a lot more sluggish. So what do we get in return? Well, to start we have a better radar. This is a minimal change, to be honest. The major feature is you can change between the radar modes while you have a lock, so you can switch between search and pulse Doppler. The other major addition is the AIM-9M Sidewinder. This is basically just an AIM-9L, which features a smokeless motor, as well as having an electronic countermeasure system. This is designed to counter or reduce the effectiveness of flares by basically turning off the seeker head when it detects a flare pop. The missile will then travel with inertial guidance, going to where the missile thinks the enemy is going to be. This is very effective in War Thunder, as the current meta kind of dictates that you do a hard turn and pop flares at the same time. This will not counter an AIM-9M. Instead, you have to pop your flares in order to get the missile to turn off its seeker and then start to maneuver. Pulling a high G turn while popping flares, it's just not going to work, so you kind of have to think before you try and counter this missile. So the F-16C builds upon the good performance and weapons of the A models, and it's basically in RB just a slight upgrade to the F-16 overall, apart from the low speed maneuverability. But this plane is now a multi-role functioning jet, I guess you could call it. We now get a selection of ground ordnance. In my opinion, this plane now makes the F-14B quite redundant. Not only do we get a lightning pod, or a T-pod it's more commonly known, this gives you thermal imaging and a very high level of zoom, allowing you to easily target enemy tanks, both in air RB and in ground RB, I guess. We also have a selection of very potent air-to-ground weaponry, such as the AGM-65D Mavericks, the ones which also have a thermal imager. We then also have a selection of GBUs, as well as your good old-fashioned dumbfire rockets and dumb drop bombs. For me personally, the F-16C does shine in ground realistic. The smokeless motor makes it incredibly dangerous because you don't get the diamond obviously in ground realistic, and you also have a high selection of incredibly powerful air-to-ground weaponry. Those AGM-65Ds are a lifesaver for knocking out CAS at long range. But apart from the new AIM-9Ms and the slightly improved radar, there isn't a huge amount of change between the previous F-16D. It's not going to be a huge step up in the meta. People are going to have to learn how to counter their AIM-9Ms though. No doubt Seeker, Define, Dube and Jake are all going to have incredibly good videos coming out soon on how to counter them. And without further ado, let's go on to the MiG-29SMT. Again, like the F-16C, the SMT kind of gives multi-role functionality to the Soviets. Again, the engines are improved and we now have an increased amount of fuel load. This again makes the plane a lot heavier than the previous A version of the MiG-29, but it does now allow for you to take a high amount of fuel into a game and essentially just afterburn for the entire match. This is a more brain-dead playstyle, which isn't really suited for the more sophisticated players, but me myself being an old man now, at the age of 27, I kind of welcome the not having to really think too much. And you won't be doing much thinking with the MiG-29 because we now get the R-73, the incredibly good IR missile. Now, what makes it good, you're probably asking? Am I just being an old man and saying something stupid which doesn't really make sense? Well, no, I'm not. The R-73s, they have thrust vectoring. This means they can be fired at incredibly short range. They're in like the lineage of the R-60Ms really. They are more dogfight IR missiles compared to the AIM-9Ms, which are more medium range IR missiles. So the R-73 is incredibly potent in a, well, the plane itself isn't that good in a dogfight because it's a lot heavier than the A, but at close range, high aspect or wide aspect shots, the R-73 will not let you down. Like the AIM-9M, it also has an electronic countermeasure system, But unlike the AIM-9M, which used inertial navigation and turned off its seeker, the seeker of the R-73 basically shrinks itself down to just focusing on the plane. So if you think about a ring locking onto the plane, obviously when a player pops flares, those flares are behind the plane. So basically the R-73s aren't even picking up the flares. This means in a rear aspect shot, the R-73s are actually incredibly easy to counter because the flares obviously do get picked up by the seeker head. But in a side aspect shot, that seeker of the R-73 is not even picking up the flares, and you will get killed if you let a MiG-29 get on your side, really. So quite unintuitively, in order to counter the R-73s, you're going to want to get that the seeker is looking directly at your engine. This doesn't really make sense because that is the hottest part of your plane, but you can then pop flares and then maneuver as well. Like I say, the meta isn't really changing at top tier. You just need to kind of get used to countering these new types of missiles. The AIM-9M, you have to pop flare and then maneuver, and the R-73s, you kind of have to unintuitively get your hottest part of the plane facing the missile and then flare. Again, to reiterate, the R-73s perform the best in side aspect shots, as this pretty much nullifies the enemy's flare pattern. Apart from that, the MiG-29 also gets its good old-fashioned R-27ERs. They are still incredibly fantastic in the current meta. As I said though, people are tending to be lower down though, so they have lost a little bit of potency. Not really because of their own performance, but more because players have adapted to counter them. We also now get the R-27ET. This is an extended range IR version of the R-27ER. Not particularly useful in my opinion. They are still easily countable by flares though. And finally, for the Israeli tech tree, we have the Barak II. This is just an F-16 in a two-seater configuration. It's more of a more flushed out multi-role fighter for the Israeli tech tree. Like the F-16C, we get a wide plethora of air-to-ground weapons. We do not get any AGM-65 Mavericks for some reason. I guess the Israelis didn't want to buy them. We do get a healthy selection of GBUs, essentially laser-guided bombs. We also get the GBU-15s, which are TV-guided 2,000 pounders, very, very potent weapons. These, of course, are guided by the same lightning pod or T-pod, so we have great thermal imaging as well as long-range zoom, making this a fantastic closer support jet if you are willing to grind out the Macavers, something which kind of made me want to shoot myself in the balls. But anyway, the Barak II, like the American F-16C, we do get the AIM-9Ms. Same thing here, just flare and then maneuver instead of doing it at the same time. Unlike the first dev server, the Barak II now does get the AIM-7Ms, so we can have... It's the first plane I think that does get Fox 1 missiles for the Israeli tech tree. The old F-16, not the F-16, the old Kurnas 2000 used to have them, but they removed them. So it is a little bit of a step up for the Israeli tech tree. The plane itself, though, as you can probably guess, is a lot heavier than the... Well, it's even heavier than the F-16C and a lot heavier than the F-16 ADFs and the AGA, that sort of stuff. Because it is a twin cockpit and has a incredibly... Well, it has a bigger spine, really. So you are going to be losing out a lot, particularly in the low speed maneuverability, a lot more parasitic drag. It's not going to be the best dogfighter, but we still have those fantastic air-to-air missiles. So boys, I don't really think that the addition of these planes is going to be particularly meta-changing. I think the AIM-9M and the R-73 could have been added to the MiG-29A and the F-16As respectively, and we would still have had the same kind of change in playstyle. There's nothing really new about these planes which... there's nothing really forcing me to grind them other than to get these new missiles. There's nothing really fantastic about the planes themselves, to be honest. It's not a huge step up in performance. We've not got any new avionics, really. So while the missiles are a big step up in capabilities, in general, the F-16C, the Barak II, and the MiG-29SMT, they are a downgrade in terms of maneuverability, and they generally will still be beaten by things such as the MiG-29A, the F-16AJ, as well as the ADF variants in a guns-only dogfight. I hope you guys like this short little video going over some of the meta changes which I've seen in my couple of hours playing this patch. I know it's not a review video, but I don't have time to do that in a night. Anyway boys, I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching, If you made it all the way to the end of the video, leave a comment saying baked beans, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, boys.